Amen. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Howard. I'm the lead pastor here at Revision. I just want you to know that if I have to sweat profusely to the point of heat stroke with anybody, I'm glad it's all of you. We learned this week that the air conditioner at the school is broken, but they ordered the part, and it'll be back on next Sunday. So be here next Sunday for a nice air-conditioned atmosphere. Also, next Sunday we have baby dedications, and next Sunday is Father's Day, and we have a special giveaway for everyone who is a father or has ever met one. So if that's you, you're not going to want to miss next week. When I was in grad school, I studied Hebrew. And long story short, right before the semester when I was supposed to begin, the school decided to try out this whole new experimental way of teaching languages that was less academic and more kind of immersion therapy, slower and conversational, like the way that kids learn to speak. And most people were really fired up about that because language learning is difficult, but I was not. Because I wanted to learn to read Hebrew academically, not speak it at the level of an ancient 4-year-old. Lechem, bread, lechem. So I'd already decided going in that I was going to put in low effort to this class because I didn't want to go slow and learn it conversationally. And then I showed up on the first day, and the professor told us that every test would be based on one of the units in the book. And each unit had 8 different chapters that were like conversations in Hebrew. And he said basically what he was going to do every test was just pull out one of those 8 conversations at random, throw it on the test, and we'd have to translate it into English. And as I was thinking about how I could get an A in Hebrew while putting in as little effort as possible, I remembered a story about the great British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Churchill almost missed out on a career in politics entirely, because back in his day, to even get your foot in the door, you had to take something in England called the civil service exam. And you could only fail 3 times, and then you were out for good. And Churchill failed twice. And on the night before his 3rd exam, he realized he was going to fail again, unless he got a little bit of luck. And so he decided to try and make his own luck. See, 50% of the grade was questions and essays, and 50% was mapping out a British territory. And when Churchill was taking this test, it was the height of the British Empire. They had territories and protectorates all over the globe on almost every continent. And so he decided, I don't have time to study all that, but I got time to study one. So he wrote the name down of every single British territory and protectorate and colony in the world, threw them all in a hat and drew out one. And he spent one night memorizing the geography, the rivers, the lakes, the cities, the railroads of Jamaica. And he walked in the next day and he sat down with a knot in his stomach alongside a whole bunch of other hopeful men and women. And he watched the proctor hand out the exam and then a blank sheet of paper for the map section, and then walk up to a chalkboard, pick up a piece of chalk, and write Jamaica on the board. And Churchill got 50 out of 50 on the map exam, barely passed, and world history is different because of it. And I decided if it worked for Churchill, it could work for me. And so when it got to Hebrew, I thought, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay no attention. I'm going to study very little. And every night before the test, I'm just going to open it up, pick one of the random conversations, one of the 8, memorize it in English, and then go take the exam. And I did. And I realized every time I was walking in there to take a test that it was boom or bust for me. I was getting an A or an F, nothing in between. And because this is church, this is the part of the story where you're all waiting for me to tell you how it blew up in my face, and it's bad, and if you're a student, you shouldn't study like that and pull out some deep spiritual principle. But here's the thing, I nailed it. I went 12 for 12 on picking the right one of those conversations. I got 100% every single test, and 2 semesters later, my grades were high enough that I got inducted into the Eta Beta Rho Hebrew Language National Honor Society. I got a badge for it and everything. But for real, if you're a student in here today, do not study like that. Don't do it. Don't Churchill it. Because it'll probably blow up in your face. It's a terrible way to do school. And even if it doesn't, if you get lucky and it works for you the way that it worked for me, you'll pay the price for it later. See, that's what I learned the next year when I was studying the Old Testament in Hebrew, and I realized I only know 3 words. I know bread, rock, and I'm here, because I took attendance every day. I had to learn to say that. And I got to the point where I recognized I had figured out the what of school. The what of that class was getting the grades, getting the degree, getting out into the real world to do this thing I felt like God wanted me to do. The what of Hebrew class was passing Hebrew, so I could check off that box on my study chart, on my curriculum. But the why, the reason I was there, the whole purpose of studying this original language that the Bible was written in was so that I could open it up and the words would jump off the page, so I could understand more deeply what it was saying about who God is and who he made us to be. And even more than that, the why behind me taking that class was so that someday I could take this ancient book through which the God of the universe reveals himself to us and communicate it in a way that makes sense tangibly and relatably for other people, like real people in the real world working real jobs. And when I realized that was the why of Hebrew and I had totally missed it while chasing the what, I had to go back and learn a whole lot of stuff that I had skipped over the first time. And I could have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of trouble if I had just lived into the why originally. And when it comes to faith, when it comes to following Jesus, a lot of us have the what figured out, but we sometimes forget the why. There are a lot of churches, there are a whole lot of Christians out there in our country who get really hung up on the what. They have the right lists of the right stuff to do and the right stuff to avoid, the right boxes to check, the right things to believe and things not to believe and ways to behave, and they're pretty good at it. Just ask them if you don't believe me, they'll tell you. They'll tell you, and they'll tell you why their list is better than anyone else's list, and if you're really serious about following Jesus, why you should adopt it too. I think in our lives it's really easy to get caught up in that line of thinking that we got to strive to keep the list and check the boxes because that feels like the what of following Jesus. But all the while we do it, when we get caught up in that, we feel like something's missing. We feel like faith is dry and it's a struggle and we're just not sure why. And I think tragically, when we walk into that type of life, when we get caught up in that line of thinking, when we're living like that, striving for the what but forgetting the why, we not only miss out on the beauty and the epic adventure of following Jesus that God created us for, but also we miss out on the chance to show a broken and desperate world, one that is just dying to breathe in the oxygen of Jesus' love. What this whole movement we call the church is really all about. And so this morning, I just want to remind us why. And here's why I want to remind us why. We're in week 2 of this 3-week series called For Iowa, where we're looking at the vision God has given this church, this community, for this place where he has us. We're talking about who he's inviting us to be and what he's inviting us to do right here and right now for Iowa, and digging into some major shifts that have to happen in our mindsets, in the way that we see the world, the way we live and move and breathe in the world, if we're going to actually pull it off and actually be a church that helps people meet Jesus and follow him fully, that rewrites eternity for Iowa, for the people around us. And understand the point of this series, my goal here is not just to give us more information. What I don't want is for us to walk out of here with a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more understanding, filled up with a little bit bigger intellectual picture of who God is and who he made us to be. I think we have enough information. Most of us have too much information. Jossie Chaco said it in his message here a couple weeks ago. If information could change the world, America would be heaven on earth. It's not about that. And I think sometimes knowing a whole lot of information is what causes us to get caught up in the what while missing the why in the first place. My goal in this series is to stir you up. I want to light a fire deep inside your souls for Jesus and for this place that he has us, for this city and this state. I want to ignite a passion in us, and I want to do it this week by liberating us from the box-checking, list-keeping religiosity that is so easy to fall into, and reminding us why we're here in the first place, and what the heartbeat of it all is, what it really looks like to walk out into a dark world as followers of Jesus and bring transformation. And Jesus actually has a whole lot of thoughts about this. So if you got a Bible with you this morning, you can crack it open to the book of Matthew. First book in the New Testament. It's between Malachi and Mark. This is an eyewitness account written by one of Jesus' 12 disciples. And we're going to be in chapter 22 this morning. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. The words are on the screen. And if you don't own one, we got a bunch of the Next Steps table. Please take one home. We're going to start in verse 34 and look at this interaction Jesus had with this group of guys known as the Pharisees. And he just had a conversation with this other group of guys known as the Sadducees, and he frustrated them. And so the Pharisees are like, Jesus is smarter than the Sadducees, but not us, because those two groups didn't really like each other. But those two groups should be really encouraging to us. Like for any of us who've ever struggled with reducing following God into just this list of stuff we do and don't do, they're super encouraging because that's exactly what they did. They did it. We're not the first people in the history of the world to struggle with this. And these were like the super religious guys of their day, and they did it too. And also they really hated Jesus. They hated him because he shook things up, and so they kept trying to trap him into saying something that would violate one of the items on their list, that would check one of the wrong boxes on their list of what it looked like to follow God, so they could trap him and arrest him and get rid of him. And this is what went down in Matthew 22. It said, hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? At this point, this guy thinks he's super clever. He's trying to trick Jesus, because there are a whole lot of commandments to choose from when you get to pick what the greatest one in the whole law is. The Pharisees had actually developed a list of 613 commandments that they found in the Old Testament. But then, because they wanted to be so careful not to break any of those, they wrote this whole thing called the Midrash, which basically put a fence around those 613, and they added thousands upon thousands of other commands so that no one would even get close to breaking one of those commands if they were really serious about God. And they look at Jesus and say, hey, pick one. Which one's the most important, so that they can grab one of the other 612 that he didn't pick and say, oh, he doesn't care about that one. See, he's a fraud. He's a phony. We got him now. Except he's Jesus. So Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So first things first, Jesus wins, because he didn't even pick from their list of 613. Took it in a whole different direction, quoted the Shema from Deuteronomy 6. It's the foundational passage for their whole society. So number one, he avoided the question that they were trying to trap him in. And number two, he phrased it in such a way that they can't even fight with him. They can't even argue. And now they're super frustrated, but there's something in here that I want us to see. He says something totally revolutionary in his response, and guaranteed all the Pharisees, all his disciples, everybody who was sitting around hearing him say this would have been absolutely floored when they heard it. He said, Jesus, what's the most important commandment? He said, love. Love God with everything you've got and love other people. That's what matters. Everything else is secondary. And he closes by saying, all the law and the prophets hang on this. He looks at these guys and tells them the whole book, the whole thing from beginning to end, this thread that God has been weaving since he created the universe, all of the law, all 613 of them, all the prophets, all this vision, everything, all of it hangs on love. Love is the reason, love is the foundation, love is the whole purpose God had in creating the world. It's what he made you for. And if you get it right, the rest of it will all fall into place. Love is what it's all about. And the Pharisees in this moment, they're just too dumbfounded, too blown away by this whole thing to even argue with him. Plus, every time they try arguing with him, he wins, and they look like idiots. But here's what we know from the way that the story of Jesus plays out from this point forward. They don't buy it. They don't think he's right. They don't believe him that the whole law and prophets hang on love. They're looking at him and they're thinking, like, the whole law and the prophets, like all this stuff that we've devoted our lives to studying can be summed up in one word, love? Really, Jesus? There's 613 commands. We got thousands of other ones, so no one breaks it. So Jesus, this whole like all you need is love, love is all you need, Jesus Lennon, like forget you. You are missing something. This is oversimplified. You've kind of watered it down a little bit there, Jesus. You know what? There's a whole lot of people in our world that think the same thing too. That have that same objection to this idea that Jesus throws out there. And maybe even you do. Maybe when I said the words, if you get love right, the rest of it will all fall into place, you started thinking, well, man, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. Because there's like, yeah, love is important. But that's not the whole of following Jesus. You know, there's this and there's this and there's this. And so the question is this. Am I just dumbing it down when I say that? Is Revision's goal, is our purpose, is our vision to be a church that is built on and driven by love, is that just wishy-washy? Is Jesus dumbing it down when he says this? Is the idea that love drives everything, is that just sloppy Christianity? Is it ignoring a whole lot of the systems and a whole lot of the rules and a whole lot of the parts of the whole of what it means to follow God? Is it taking out the details? Is it just a bunch of hippie garbage? Like, oh, let's just love each other, man, and it'll all be fine. Here's the truth. There are a whole lot of complex systems and giant lists of rules floating around out there in our culture and floating around out there in the church. And the idea that everything hangs on loving God with all we've got and loving others does really feel simple compared to all that. But here's what you need to know. Loving others is far less complicated, but it is far more costly. If we take this seriously, if we really decide that for Iowa we're going to fight to be a church that lives out what Jesus meant by this, it's going to require a whole lot more of us than checking off a few boxes here and there and calling ourselves good. Because the thing is, there's always loopholes when it comes to the rules and regulations. There's always some way around them. Most of us have gotten really clever during our time on this planet figuring out how to keep the letter of the law. Like in every area, we figure out how to keep the letter of the law at school and at work and at church and in our relationships and when our parents tell us what to do. We've gotten really good at finding a workaround, at finding a shortcut. But there are no loopholes with love. When we ask ourselves the question in any given situation, what does love require of me here? And deep down in our souls, we know the answer. There's no way of getting around it. There is either love or there's not love. And so before I challenge you, before I invite you to walk this path with me, with this church, with Jesus, I want you to know, it's only fair of me to let you know what it might require. To let you know how far love goes. This is how far love goes. At the center of this story is a man who loved with reckless abandon, and he got killed for it. He died covered in his blood and other people's saliva. That's how far love goes. You ask the question, what does love require of me? And the answer is going to cost you way more than your checklist ever cost you. It's the essence of following Jesus, but don't make the mistake of believing that this is some watered-down version of faith. Love cost the Father his Son, it cost our Savior his life, and it will cost you. But what you'll find, if you're willing to pay that cost in the exchange, is abundant life and meaning and purpose and adventure like you never thought possible. You know what else you'll find? You'll find that Jesus was right. All of the law and all the prophets, this whole story, the thread that's been woven from beginning to end, does hang on love. If we love God with everything we've got and we love the people around us, all the rest of it really does fall into place. All that obeying and all that striving and all that box checking, that stuff that used to feel like a burden, it used to feel heavy, it used to feel confusing, it used to feel like there has to be something more. It used to feel like, man, I'm never going to get it fully right. Instead of weighing us down, it's going to be liberating and we're going to find life in it. Because we're not doing it to earn our way to God anymore. We're doing it out of response to the love God has already given us. It's life-giving. That's what Jesus is saying here. The Pharisees totally missed it. But here's what Jesus meant when he said what he said. He said, there's all these commandments, right? hundreds and hundreds of them, but love is the foundation they're built on. Love is the foundation the world is built on. Love is the thing behind all the other things. And we grow up here and don't lie. Why not? Because the Bible says so. And Jesus is like, no, that's yeah, but don't lie because it hurts other people and it damages relationships when you do. Or here, we should give, be givers, be generous givers. Why? Well, the Bible says to. God demands a tithe. He needs it or something. And Jesus is like, no, God actually doesn't need your money. That's not it, but the poor people around you do. Give because it blesses needy people. We grew up here in, to be pure sexually. Don't pressure your girlfriend into something she doesn't want to do. And you say, well, why? Well, the Bible says to. The Bible says sex is just for marriage. And Jesus is like, yeah, but don't miss it. When you pressure somebody there, you dehumanize them. You take away her agency as a person and you create regret, and that's poison. Don't do it. Don't be racist. Don't tolerate any system that is. Why? Well, the Bible says not to. I don't want God to smite me or Twitter to smite me. God and Twitter, they smite people, don't do it. No, that's not it. It's not about that. It's because when you say those words, even if it was just a joke, when you tolerate, when you sit on the sidelines of a society that creates and perpetuates those systems, then you're allowing this space to be created where a human, knit together, woven together in the image of God, gets treated and told that they are something less than fully human. And it's not okay. You guys see it? Love is the thing behind all the things. God created this world out of love. He created us in his image out of love, and it is the foundation upon which all the rest of it is built. That's what Jesus is saying here. And if he's serious, if all of it really does hang on love, then what does it look like for you and me as we walk out of this place out into a world that is hurting and broken and full of hatred and desperate for love? How can we get out into our city and our state for Iowa and do it this week? Well, there are a couple ways that Jesus did it, a couple things that I think marked his interactions with people, that showed the way that he loved and how much his life was built on love. And I want to real quickly this morning just walk through them, because I think if we can live like that, then we can live like Jesus. And 3 things Jesus did that I think we got to do for the people around us if we want to build our lives and build our church and build this community on love. We got to see people, hear people, and touch people. We got to look out at a broken world, and we got to see it, hear it, and touch it. So seeing is step 1. Jesus was always seeing people that everyone else missed. Like in Luke 13, there's this crazy story. Jesus is in the temple, and Luke writes, on the Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. I love this because everybody saw her. Every person in the synagogue, everybody with Jesus, all of his disciples, they saw her. She was like a fixture there. She'd been in that, she couldn't move. She'd been in that spot begging for money for 18 years. Everybody saw her and walked right past, but Jesus saw her. He saw her humanity. We did the same thing in Mark 10 for this group of kids that people are trying to hold back from getting there. And he saw these kids and he said, no, don't hold them back. Let them come to me. Jesus was constantly on the lookout. He had his eyes peeled for the vulnerable and the weak and the powerless and the oppressed and the needy. And for us, if love is going to be the engine that drives us forward, that drives this church forward, then we got to be on the lookout for the lonely. We got to be intentional about being on the lookout for the lonely. Like when God created the world in Genesis, it tells us that he kept on sitting back and looking at what he made and saying, like, it's good, it's very good. The first time God calls something not good in the Bible is when he notices that Adam's alone. He said, it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good. And we know that But we also know that there are a whole bunch of people out there in our world who are lost and lonely, living in relational poverty. And too often, at least for me, if you're anything like me, we're so stuck looking at ourselves that we don't even see them. I've tried to make it a habit, especially in the few years since we started Revision, of inviting some people who I think are wiser and smarter and just better at life than me to speak into my life, to be able to open up the doors of my heart and my soul and poke around in there and ask me hard questions. And I was having a conversation a couple weeks ago with one of those individuals, and he asked me, how's your life going? I said, wow, it's going really well, actually. I'm enjoying this season. He said, that's great. That's not what I meant. I meant, how's your life going for other people? I don't care about how you feel. How's your life going for your wife and for your kids and for the people at Revision? And even more importantly, how's your life going for your neighbors and for like all the lonely, broken people your life crashes into every day? How's your life going for them? If I came down to Iowa and I asked them how your life is going, what would they say? So I didn't answer because I didn't have an answer. I wasn't really sure, and I didn't have any way of responding. I was just processing it. And he said, hey, next time I ask that question, maybe you should have an answer, because I think in the end that's what will really count. We got to be on the lookout for the lonely. The second thing we got to do, step 2, is we got to hear people. We have to listen. Jesus listened all the time from the very beginning. In Mark chapter 1, Mark kind of writes about the very beginning of Jesus' ministry. Like right away when Jesus started this whole earthly ministry, this is what happened. In verse 32, it says, that evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and all the demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, just waiting for an audience with Jesus. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. The thing I find crazy about Jesus is that he was always on a mission, but never in a hurry. There's this one time when he's on his way to heal a dying girl, which feels pretty urgent to me, and this woman touches his cloak because she wants to be healed, and he stops. He stops with the knowledge that this girl's on her deathbed. He just stops right there. He's like, who touched me? And he finds the woman, and there's this little gloss over half sentence in there that's easy to just read and forget about, but it says she told him her whole story. Like in the middle of this urgent mission, Jesus is like, hey, time out, everybody. We're going to sit right here. I want to hear this lady's story. He constantly created space for people to be heard. It's interesting thinking about that and writing this message this week. And with the high-profile news that Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, like people who seem to have it made, people who seem to have all kinds of friends and all kinds of people who would listen to them because they're important, taking their own lives because they were lost and lonely. And it just shattered my heart to think about how they got to that spot, but also how many other people, unknown people and unnamed people, are struggling with that exact same thing. How many, statistically, not just a few of us in this room are struggling with that same thing. And I can't help but wonder, what if the church, what if God's people, what if this community was a place where hurting folks could be heard? And not just hurting folks outside our church, but inside our church. What if we fought to create a space where everybody could know really and really be known? I think that's what Jesus intended the church to be. In Acts 2, we read about the early church. It says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. That doesn't look like the American church. I think we miss out on some of that. A lot of it because we live in this radically individualistic culture where it's easy to be lonely but hard to admit it. And we live in this busy culture where we get caught up in the tyranny of the urgent on our calendars, and we end up pushing community to the back burner. We end up pushing church to the back burner. To the point where, like, if I told you the air conditioning was broken, some of you would not even have come today. That just is. That's why I didn't tell you. I knew on Thursday. I'm just being honest, okay? We have 14 people from our parent church are in Rwanda right now. They're hiking 2 miles uphill to church in the African heat to sit shoulder to shoulder for hours amongst a group of people who have never even heard of air conditioning. Got friends in Mexico sitting in open air churches with bees and bugs buzzing around because they don't have air conditioning. But like, it's so unimportant, the getting together in the community to us in America. We wouldn't even come. We're like, I'll go next week once the air is fixed. It's just us. It's all of us. It's the way that we think. But Jesus says we need each other. And I think living in love means we got to make proximity a priority. We got to crave it. We got to carve out space to get near each other. The Bible says we're a body. And bodies are super when they're together, not so much when they're apart. Like, this is an awesome hand. I love it. It's been with me for years. It's great. But it would not be as great if you just lopped it off and threw it over on the corner of the stage. It would be gross. It would be a severed hand. That's nasty. Okay, bodies are really super when they're together. They're not super when they're apart. Like, Jesus says we need each other. We're built for it. We got to make proximity a priority. We got to get into relationship with each other. One of our core values at Revision is that love people, do life with people, because we believe that God created us for each other. And we need it for us, for our own sake, so that we can be known. But we also need to do it for other people's sake. Because every single person in this room, God wants to use you to listen and to hear and to know somebody else and to be a blessing to the people around you. So we got to make proximity a priority. And step number 3 is this: touch. This one is admittedly a struggle for me. Like, I often think I could live out the rest of my days without ever hugging another human. Or animal, just to be clear. That's even worse. Ugh. Okay, but like, I could live out the rest of my days without ever hugging anyone, and I would be so happy with that. I'm hugged out, you guys. But I also realize, like, I have 4 kids. That's just not what love looks like. It's just not what love looked like for Jesus. There's a story that always just blows me away. It's in Matthew 8. It says this: when Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy, which is this disgusting disease of the skin. Your limbs and your skin would just rot and fall off. Okay, a man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." Immediately he was cleansed of the leprosy. It gets me that Jesus has touched this dude. Like, he had a skin condition, one that was deadly and horrific and communicable through touch. And Jesus reached out and touched him. Nobody had touched this guy since the day he got leprosy. It was illegal. It was unclean in their society to touch this guy. And Jesus touched him. And the thing that just shakes me up about it is Jesus didn't even have to touch him to heal him. Most of the people Jesus healed, he didn't touch. He raised a guy from the dead once without even going into the tomb. He just yelled from like the hillside, "Hey, Lazarus, get out of there." And he came alive. Jesus didn't have to touch this guy. But he did. He reached out and touched him to heal him. And I think maybe it's because this guy, what he really needed wasn't just healing from his disease, but love for his rejection. Like, we got to reach out to the unreachable, and we got to touch the untouchable, and we got to love the unlovable if we're going to get this right. We got to do it because that's what Jesus did for us. His love reached out to us when we were unreachable, and his love touched us when we were untouchable, and his love loved us when we were unlovable. And if we're going to find the life that is truly life, and we're going to be the church that God is asking us to be right here, right now, in this place for this city, then the key is responding to the crazy love he's lavished on us by walking out and sharing it with our world. So the question is, will you do it this week? Will you stop pretending that following God is about checking off the right boxes and keeping some list? and decide that all of it hangs on love, that love is the thing behind all the other things? Will you let God's love invade and transform your soul in a way that compels you to walk out and share it with the people around you? Will you be on the lookout for the lonely? Will you make proximity a priority? Will you embrace the exiled? Will you ask yourself the question this week, what does love require of me in this situation? That's what I'm challenging you to. Last week I challenged everybody to ask at least once per day, how can I help? Just to get humble and get up under other people's burdens and ask once per day, how can I help? This week I want to challenge you to ask once per day in some situation, what does love require of me here? And then whatever the answer is, whatever you know deep down in your soul it requires of you, and whatever the cost is, chase it, pay it, do it. Chase love because Jesus' love chased you. I dare you to try it for a week. And if you ever want to know like how you're doing in the whole faith thing, if you ever feel like, you know what, I like school because I got a report card. I could really use a Jesus report card. If you want a report card on your faith, just see how you're loving other people. Ask yourself, how well am I loving the people around me? Because that's your answer. And there's no Churchill method. There's no shortcut. There's no way around it. You're either loving them or you're not. That's where you're at. And I think if we don't get this right, I think if we don't do it, if we settle for reducing Jesus to a checklist, we will always find faith that feels dry and will never be the movement Jesus dreamed up to change the world that he called the church. Because Jesus said that the way, not a way, the way the world will know that we belong to him is our love. Our love for God, our love for each other, and our love for the people around us, all flowing out of God's love freely given to us. If we miss love, we miss it. But if we get this one right, if we trust that Jesus was right when he was talking to the Pharisees, that all of it hangs on loving God with everything we've got and loving the people around us like we love ourselves, no matter what it costs, I think what we're going to get is front row seats to what God is doing to rewrite eternity and change the world as we watch him draw our friends and our family and our coworkers and our neighbors to himself through the love, his love that lives in us. I mean, it's easy to sit back and wonder like how we can reach out to broken people, how we can reach the lost. There are a whole lot of Christians and a whole lot of churches just spend a ton of time thinking and worrying and racking their brains over outreach. I wrote a blog a couple weeks ago, one of my favorite bloggers, her name's Sonia Anderson, and she was writing about sitting in a church meeting where they were talking about outreach. And the consensus was, well, it's really hard. Outreach is just tough. Evangelism is always going to be the thing we're worst at. There's no one-size-fits-all method. You know, there's no magic solution. It's just hard. She said she was sitting there and she realized, yes, there is. There is a one-size-fits-all method. There is a magic solution. Jesus said so. And she wrote this, love is the silver bullet. Love is the silver bullet. It's the thing behind all the other things. And if we get it right, the rest of it falls into place. And I think our legacy as individuals and our legacy as a church for our state, for the next generation, for the people who come after us depends on us getting this right. The way we love will be our legacy because our love is the one thing that can live beyond us and outlast us. So this week, let's ask that question. What does love require of me? And let's chase it because Jesus' love chased us. Will you guys pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you for loving us. Thank you for your ridiculous, transformative love that changes everything about who we are and everything about our future and everything about our eternity. Forgive us for all the times where we've avoided love because it's hard, where we've avoided loving the people around us like you because it's going to cost us something, and we've decided that maybe if we can just check off the right boxes, that'll be enough. Forgive us for that. Fire us up. Let a passion and a fire inside our souls to walk out into a broken world that's just yearning for the oxygen of your love, and just breathe that onto them. Let us be on the lookout for the lonely. Help us make proximity a priority. God, give us the grace and the love that we need to embrace the exiled. Would you just help us love the world around us the way that you love it? And use us to rewrite eternity with your love. Thank you for loving us. In Jesus' name, amen.